I started the recording for your revision purposes, because you can view the lecture after the lectures even. So that's why I record all these things. So in buckling of columns, what is the meaning of that? Buckling of columns. So suppose if this is your body, this is your column, fixed supported at the base. So this is your base, and you apply P load here. So you know that this material will fail by the compressive stress, because it arise, the material has compressive stress, and the compressive stress will try to crush the body. You can just put the take the chalk, you know, the duster and chalk. So take the chalk, apply put it in between your fingers, apply a force, you can easily crush the chalk. That is the crushing stress. So crushing stress will crush the body. Now you just elongate the body, okay, means increase the length, means increase the length and apply the force like this. So suppose I am in just give me a sec. So if I take a larger body and apply the same force P, now what will happen? So for practical demonstration, take the refill of your pen. Okay, take out that refill. Put so suppose this is your refill and this is the nip of the refill. Put your finger like this at the top, at the bottom, and try to press it. You will see that the refill will bend like this. Okay, this is an example you can see easily. Now you cannot bend the chalk. So suppose this is your chalk, you apply the force from the top and bottom from your fingers. Okay, this is your fingers, you are applying a load like this. So this is your hand, this is your finger. So you apply the load, you can see that this will not bend. But when you take the refill of your pen, okay, and you apply stress like this, this is your first finger, this is your second finger, and you just apply it. Okay, what will be the feature? You can see that this will buckle or this will bend like this. Okay, so this is called the buckling. This is called the buckling, and this is a phenomenon of bending. Bending means the body is bending in the transverse direction. In first case, the bending happens like this. You apply force, body bend like this. But here you are applying it as suppose this is your in the direction, this is your first direction, so it is bending like this. I hope you have seen from this, you can learn from the even refill problem. You can see that this is buckling. So earlier what people used to do is they apply the compressive stress concept, and they obtained, so compressive stress, you know, P by A. So design the area from sigma, area is equal to P by sigma crushing compressive. So you know sigma compressive, you know P, you can design the area is equal to B into D, you can design it. But then people realize that no, the length factor is also coming in the problem, because here you're not getting length factor na. But if you increase the length, it will buckle like this. So you're applying P force, it will buckle like this. So this is your condition, it will buckle like this, it will bend like this. Now this will also cause the failure, because if you just increase the force P and you design your body like that, it will fail only by compressive stress. But before going to the compressive stress, the body fail through the buckling, and this is not the required case. So if you look at the bridges, the columns, so suppose any bridge, any pillar of the bridge will look like this, what will happen? That will fail. So that's why the term come Euler buckling. So Euler find out that no, not only the area of cross section, but also the length should be considered in designing of the columns. So his formula is, so what is the P critical? P critical should be pi square EI upon LE square. So this is your equivalent length. So he obtained a critical load for the buckling condition is pi square EI upon LE square. So he put the length value. So you can see that now here at this point there is no length value. No length term is be considered in describing the compressive stress. But here we consider the length stress. We consider the length condition. So that means if we increase the length, you can see that P is inversely proportional to 1 by LE square. That means if we increase the length, P critical decrease. That means P critical is the value of the load at which the buckling will start. So if we increase the length, even a smaller value of P can buckle the body. Okay, so that means if you take a chalk or if you take a refill, so if you apply 100 Newton force here, so it will not buckle. But if you apply even 10 Newton force at this point of a refill, it will buckle. So that is the meaning of that. So critical load is the maximum value that will cause the buckling in the body. So it is inversely proportional to length of a square. That means if you increase the length by 2 times, the buckling, the critical force will reduce by four times. Means what is the value? No, suppose your critical early critical value is P critical 1, that will be decreased by 4 times. Means earlier if we just increase the length by 2 times, suppose the length is 1 meter, I increase by 2 meter, suppose to 2 meter, and you earlier you are applying 10 Newton force. Now if you even applied 10 divided by 4, what 2.5 Newton, it will buckle. So that is the concept of Euler buckling. So Euler considered that uh, not only compressive stress will cause the failure, but also buckling can cause the failure. Buckling can cause the failure. So he made these points in his experiments or in his theory, and he obtained P critical is equal to pi square EI upon LE square. So this is your important, means you can point out how many star you want. Important 5 star, or I am putting it infinity star. Okay, this is a very important formula. Okay, if you want to do the question in Euler buckling, just remember this formula. Any here and there you want to obtain P critical length I, just only the question is coming from this formula. You are not going to go here and there and or solve this solve these things. Okay, now you there is a term called slenderness ratio. So suppose if I am writing P is equal to pi square EI upon LE square. Okay, now I can also write I as AK square. Now what is the meaning of that? This is your K value is radius of gyration. You know radius of gyration from your mechanics. You can write I as mk square, and K is your radius of gyration where the mass m is supposed to act for a body. So suppose this is your body and its value, its moment of inertia is I about this point. So radius of gyration is that value at from the center at distance K. We suppose that all the mass is acting at this point, and the value is mk square. So divided by LE square, and if we just do one shifting, that is LE by K whole square. Okay, you can just put the by K here, K square here. Okay, and you put LE by K whole square. So LE by K is called slenderness ratio. Slenderness ratio. So sometimes in exam they can ask what is the slenderness ratio. So you can directly how to obtain I. Suppose for a square it is 1 by 12 a ki power 4, and you just take mk square divided by this, you will get K value. So LE by K will be your slenderness ratio. So this is the first concept. So uh, now different types of boundary condition for the buckling condition. So I'm drawing these things. So suppose this is your first body. Okay. So this is all this these are your boundary conditions. You can see that. So means suppose these are your columns, and what are the end support we are putting. So suppose there are two types of support, that is hinge and fixed. Okay, what is the meaning of hinge and what is the meaning of fixed? So in hinge, what is the meaning is, suppose you have something like this, and at this center you put a hole, and at the center you just put, suppose this is another body, okay, and you just pin a roller, suppose a nail or a screw, so that will rotate like this. There is no any resisting moment for this. It will rotate like this, it will go here or it will go here. So this is a hinge support, means you are providing a hinge at the base. So just like the door of your home, that is on your that the you can see that at the corner something like this is placed. So these are called the hinges of the door. So at your door, so this will not create a bending moment, okay. So that is the first thing, that is the hinge support. So at the door, the support at the corner of the door is a hinge. Now what is the meaning of fixed support? So you can see that you just put a means you can just suppose this is your body like this, and you capture the body like this, okay. This is your body, and you capture the body like this, beneath the ground, under the wall, and you hold it tightly, okay. So if you hold that tightly, if you hold that tightly, it will create a bending. It will resist the if you change the configuration, it will resist the, suppose I'm changing the configuration like this, it is resisting. You cannot this part of the body is resisting. That is called a fixed support. So just a few idea what is fixed support and what is hinge support. So after going that, just one thing. So how many types of configuration can be possible from hinge and fixed support? So suppose there are two types. So here also and here also you can put the supports. So two from this, two from this. So you can provide hinge and hinge here. You can provide fixed and fixed here. You can provide fixed and hinge here. You can provide hinge and fixed here. So these are the three things you can just put. So just so just put that. Suppose I am putting hinge and hinge here. So this is your hinge support. I am providing hinge also here and here also. Okay, these are your hinge and hinge support. Now, if I provide a support like this, suppose this is your body, I am providing support like this. Okay, this is your support here also, and I'm here also I'm providing. So this is your fixed support. Both the ends are captured. Okay, now I can provide hinge here and a fixed support here at the column. So this is another condition, or I can provide a fixed support here, okay, and a hinge support here. These are all your four conditions. Now, if this is your hinge and hinge, so I am write H plus H, hinge and hinge, fixed and fixed F plus F, hinge and fixed I am writing H plus F, and another F plus H. This is fixed plus hinged. Okay. So what, suppose now P force is acting in this, suppose at this hinge you are acting P force, at this support fixed support you are acting P force, at this hinge you are acting P force, and here you are acting P force. So you know that the load is P critical is equal to pi square EI upon LE square. Now every configuration will produce different critical loads. That means the buckling load, or that will initiate the buckling or cause the buckling, that minimum force is different for different body. Okay, now for different boundary conditions, what is the meaning of that? So let me like this. For P critical, suppose this is your 1, P critical 2, P critical 3, and P critical 4. If your length, moment of inertia, your elastic properties all are same, then your P critical is different for all the configuration. That means P critical 1 is not equal to P critical 2, is not equal to P critical 3, is not equal to P critical 4. Okay, and now how you can find the value? So you just remember these things. Uh, One more thing. This is not something, not one thing I'm missing. Let me. Both are the same things. Now, what if uh, I remove this support. So this is hinge and free end. Okay, no. So this is fixed and free end. Okay, because earlier I am just I produce as both things as the same thing. So this is your fixed and free end. Okay, the body is like this. So these are your four conditions: hinge and hinge point, fixed point, fixed and free point, and then fixed and hinge point. These are your four conditions. So you can see that P critical one is not equal to P critical. That means the boundary condition is also defining the critical load. For earlier, length is only deciding. Now the boundary condition is deciding the your condition for critical load. So now the only thing that will change is, so I'm writing here. So you know the formula, P critical is pi square EI upon LE square. So the length LE, that is equivalent length. Here in this case, you can see it is L. Okay. Here in this case, it is LE is equal to L by 2. For this case, LE is equal to 2L. And for this case, LE is equal to L by root 2. You need to remember this. You cannot, if you want that, I will explain the concept. Nothing is like concept. You need to learn these values. What is the value for, means how you put the values and get the results. So, just I'm explaining you a trick, how to learn this. So at hinge, uh, so the buckling will be like this. Okay, at the fixed support, the buckling is like this. So at the ends, buckle will not be there because they are captured by the supports, and after that it will bend like this. Okay, and again it will be a static position. Here at the free end, it will buckle like this. So okay, this is your P force is acting, and at this condition, because these are captured, so it will not buckle. So it will be like this. The buckling would be like this up to end. So the buckling is like this. Okay, so these are the values. Means what is the meaning of that? So both ends are captured. So initially no buckling, and after that the buckling will be there. But here you can see that initially no buckling. After that the free end is going like this. And here initially no buckling, but at the hinge there is a buckling because hinge doesn't register bending moment. So that will create a different boundary conditions. So you need to remember this. So for this, P critical is equal to pi square EI upon L square. For this, P critical is equal to pi square EI upon L by 2 whole square, and that is equal to I will write directly here. So P critical is equal to 4 pi square EI upon L square. Sorry, L square, not L square. Here P critical is equal to pi square EI upon 4 L square, and here P critical is equal to pi square EI upon L square. Now, what is the meaning of this? That means which P critical is very less, that free end, for the free end condition. So this is very less. That means the free end can even buckle with the smaller load, and the maximum value is this value. That means all the your buckling condition lies between free, that is a minimum, and your maximum condition is both fixed, both fixed. So the value of P critical lies between this minimum condition to this maximum condition. Okay, this is your maximum P critical load at which the buckling will happen. So you can see that for the free end the load is very less. Okay, we got divided by 4. So suppose length is same, E, I, everything is same. So P critical is P by 4. So suppose if P load is acting, so it will happen at P by 4 only. So this is your condition for buckling. So you need to remember these formulas. Now, few things that I want you to remember, or not remember, what we say is, you can just go with it. So first of all, just application of the formula. So now suppose you have a just I'm drawing a figure. So suppose this is your figure, your column, okay, and this is your suppose hinge support. Both are the hinge support, okay, and a P load is applying in this form. Your this is length L, and what you for the I value you need to find the cross section. What is the cross section of the beam? So cross section is rectangle, okay. So cross section is rectangle, okay. This is your D value, this is your D value, okay. Now you need to know this B is less than D. This is your condition, and you need to find what is the P critical load for which buckling will happen. Now you know the formula, you know that boundary conditions. P critical is equal to pi square EI upon LE square. Now for LE is equal to L, so that means P critical is equal to pi square EI upon L square. So you know length, you know E. Now what is the value of I? Okay, because at this section I can be taken at this value also, at this value also. You can, if you just take this body and put in a 3D, it can buckle in this direction also. So you can buckle in this direction also, or you can buckle in perpendicular plane also. That body can buckle in both directions. So the I, what is the value of I should be I minimum. So for rectangle, why I haven't taken square? Because square has the same in both the directions, so it will the difference will not arise. But if you take the rectangle, your I1 is 1 by 12 BD and your I2 is 1 by 12 DB. Okay, that is suppose this is your I1 and this is your I2. Now which I is minimum? You can just look. Your smaller value is B and your larger value is D. Okay, so that means when smaller value whole cube, this I2 value, you can see that I2 value is minimum. So let's suppose B value is 1, D value is 2. Now 1 meter and this is your 2 meters. So suppose 1 unit, any unit, you can take any unit, 1 unit, 2 unit. Now put the value. You are getting 8 by 12. Here you are getting 2 by 12. Which value is minimum? This value is minimum. That means you need to take I minimum. That what I am asking is, suppose you design the condition for the I1 value. Okay. Now you design the condition for I1 value and you are confident that it will not buckle, but it will buckle in the perpendicular direction, and that will cause the failure. That in that way you need to take this I minimum. And if you design considering the I2 value, it will not buckle even in I1 because I1 is larger than I2. That I hope you understand what I'm saying, what to say. So the pretty critical should be pi square E into I minimum by LE square. So I defined every term. What is the meaning of P critical? What is the value of I? What is the value of L? So I am hoping that you are getting what is how we define the Euler buckling. So if any question up to that, anyone please ask in the chat box. I'm giving you 1 minute, 2 minutes. You can just think any questions you can ask. Hello, any question? Anyone? Any confusion? If you haven't any confusion, then you also write, sir. It is clear. If you have any confusion, you can ask. I want much responses. You can reply. Only one person has responded only. Okay, then two things more. So first of all, we need to find what is the length above which means you can consider. So for short column, Euler buckling cannot be applied. So first limitation of the Euler buckling is you cannot apply for short columns, because then short column the failure will be by crushing stress or the compressive stress, and the buckling will not take place. So you can see that just a few seconds. So suppose I want to draw the P critical over its length. Why it is going bad? Let me take this. Okay. So these are your values. So suppose this is your graph, and what I want to draw is just give me one sec. This is your P critical, and this is your length LE. Suppose now, as we know, for Euler buckling, P critical is inversely proportional to length. That means it's a hyperbola. You can see that it's a hyperbolic equation. That means the as you increase the as you decrease the length, P critical will increase. That means uh, up to this just okay. This is your values, okay, and the length, when length is increases, P critical decreases. So this is your P critical. So suppose your length is 1 meter, and then again your length is 2 meter. Suppose this is your length 1 meter, this is your length 2 meter. Your P critical decrease should decrease. This is your for unit buckling, but there is a limitation. What up up to some value only the long column concept is applied. And suppose this is your L, what we saw, capital L. Okay. So suppose this is your capital L up to which the long column will apply. And after that, you cannot go with like this. It will go like this. Now, what is the meaning of this? This is the portion where Euler buckling is applied. And this is the portion where compressive force is applied. Means crushing stress, you can say. Crushing failure will apply. That means at this point, this is your limiting point. After that, Euler buckling is applied, and before that, crushing failure is applied. What is the meaning of that? Now, suppose if you take a chalk and a refill problem. So chalk is very small in length. You cannot buckle it. So if you apply the buckling value, it will not fail. You need crushing failure, because if you go increasing like this, okay, now you say that I will take the length small and the P critical will be like this. But no, if you design it for this P critical load, even for less value, it will fail by crushing. Okay, so that means this is your limitation for Wheeler buckling. Now, if you design for this value after this value P critical, then it will fail for the less P critical load. Now, I know you are confusing little bit, so I'm just look at it. Suppose this is your 1 meter length. Okay, I design a body for 0.8 meter, and I applied the concept of mirror buckling. So my critical load is this, but you can see that the body can fail at this point only. So our concept is wrong. Suppose your length is 1 meter and I took it as 1.2 meter, and I applied the concept of crushing failure. You know, the body, you are expecting that body would fail like at this point, but the body fail even the lesser load. So our concept is wrong. So that's why we need to put a means, you can say that this is a piecewise function. That means up to this point, your crushing failure will act, and after that point mirror buckling will act. So you need to find the length. What is the limiting length? Limiting length up to which the failure will not happen means what is the limiting length we need to take for mirror buckling. Okay, so just give me 1 sec, I'm coming. Okay, just give me. So any problem up to this? So we need to find the limiting length. So what is the value of limiting length? So suppose you apply the boundary conditions that just before the limiting length you are getting with Euler condition, and after that limiting length you are getting the, sorry, before that you are getting the crushing load, and after that you are getting the Euler buckling. So what is the condition for the L length, that is capital L, for which the buckling will happen? And that value is, you take P critical for crushing, and that should be equal to P critical for buckling. Okay, we equate these two values because you can see that this is a continuous function. That means this value is even equal to crushing failure, and this value is even equal to Euler buckling. So you know crushing, how to obtain crushing. You can directly like compressive into area. This is your crushing force, P critical. And for Euler buckling, you know pi square EI upon LE square. Now sigma compressive, you know sigma, I am writing it sigma C. Sigma C into A is equal to pi square into E into A K square. I am writing it like this way so that A can cancel from both sides. And this value is capital L. I am taking it like capital L. Okay. Your A will get cancelled out. Now your capital L square value is pi square E K square upon sigma C. Okay, so this is your limiting length after which the Euler buckling concept is applied. So this is your difference from the long column and short column. So you can consider these are the long columns and these are the short columns. Now you need to find what is the length after which long column is considered and what is the length before which short column is considered. So the length value is under root of, so pi k under root of E upon sigma C. Okay, this is your capital L length value. You know every term. What is K? Radius of gyration. Sigma C, that is the maximum compressive state the body can sustain. This is your modulus of elasticity. Okay. Now you know radius of gyration. So you can also find the radius of gyration Le by K. That is a pi under root of E by sigma C. So this is your slenderness ratio. Slenderness ratio. So this is your minimum slenderness ratio for which the Euler buckling concept is considered. So that's what I want to make you know. That means suppose for I'm giving you an example for mild steel, the slenderness ratio is 80. Okay, what is the meaning of that? So if your slenderness ratio L by K, if less than 80, then you are not going to apply the Euler buckling. You are going to apply only the short column conditions. That is the crushing failure. And if your slenderness ratio is greater than 80, then you are going to apply Euler buckling. Now, one condition left. What if the value is equal to 80? So if equal to 80, you can go either with crushing failure or buckling. Both will result in the same length. So, or both will result in the same peak critical load. So these are the concepts from the Euler buckling that I want you to go through it. So if any confusion after that, please ask. Hello. If any confusion for Euler buckling conditions and these differentiation from short columns and long columns. So you need to find what is the limiting value, and for the limiting value will be obtained, and then that will help you in obtaining the difference between the short columns and long columns. Now one more formula. Rankine considered, you know the difference. You need to always find Le and K. So Rankine considered one equation. So that is called Rankine formula. And what he considered is he obtained an equivalent 1 upon P is equal to 1 upon P crushing plus 1 upon P Euler. He put it in like this way. Now you know P crushing is sigma into A. That is a P crushing. And P Euler is pi square EI upon LE square. See, so he put like your P equivalent is 1 upon P crushing by P Euler. So what is the meaning of this? If your length is very large, if your length is very large, that means if your length is very large, then what will happen? I will put it like in this way. I hope this will make you understand. If your length is large, so this value is small because because if your length is large, PE is small. But if you take 1 by PE, that will be a greater value. Okay. Not if I write it in this way, P critical is equal to PE P crushing divided by PE plus P crit. So if your P is very large compared to P critical P crushing, then what will happen that it will you can get a value of P equivalent comparable with the Euler buckling. And if your length is very small, if your length is very small, if your length is very small, then what will happen that your you can say that the PE value. So if PE value is very high, and that will happen that 1 by PE value is very less because you can take that. Okay, so 1 by PE value is very less, or you can say directly apply 1 by P equivalent is 1 by P critical plus 1 by P Euler. So if your length is high, the dominating factor would be the P Euler. If your length is less, the dominating factor will be P critical. So Euler find that way to solve the Euler buckling problem. So this is your concept from the buckling of columns. I hope everyone understand that. Now I am going with the strain Rosset. So before that, if you have any questions, you can ask. Otherwise, I will move. So I hope you understand the graph for the long and short columns. This is a graph for the long and short columns, and this is a limiting point. you need to find this limiting point, and what is the value of what is the value for this conditions. So I remember one question in us around 2020 in GATE. So for P, you need to know pi square. So you know pi square, you know E. So in exam, they are given a stress strain curve. Okay, they are given a stress strain curve for the material. So suppose this is a stress strain curve. They given some values like this value and this value. Okay, they need to find what is the LE value. Okay, what is the LE value? They haven't given E value, not given E value, and also they I am remembering. Yeah, they given I value. They haven't given E this value, and they need to find what is the length. So and they provided the stress strain curve for the material. So they asked find the minimum length for the Euler buckling. Okay, for Euler buckling, find the minimum length. So that is this point. So what is the meaning of that? So here you can consider that the yield. So suppose this is your yield point. This is your yield point. So they given only yield points and ultimate points. So you can obtain P is equal to uh, SYT, that is your yield point, into area. That is your in ideal condition, you can say that the crushing stress is equal to tensile stress, and that is equal to yield point. Sometimes they also take ultimate point also. So it depends on the condition the material is failing by either material is ductile or brittle. So you can obtain P from this equation. Okay, and your E value. How to obtain E? So you can suppose these two values are given. So one value is given at this point, one value is given at this point. So you can obtain E as delta E by delta epsilon. That is your E value. So that's why they given the stress strain curve to find out the value of modulus of elasticity and find the value of P critical, that is SYT into A or SUT into A, and you can put the both values and you can get the length of the bar for which the Euler buckling is applied. So that was one of the question in I am remembering 2020 they asked 2019. So this is a important question they asked. So you haven't given the like okay. So first of all, let me draw it again. So suppose in exam they given a question. Let me draw. In exam they given a they given a stress strain curve for the material. Okay, first of all stress strain curve, and they asked for the buckling, determine the length. Okay, determine the length, and they only given the cross section. I think they only given the cross section. This is a so they had given that okay, suppose the length is suppose I am giving it 10 mm. Okay, and it is a square cross section, and they asked for buckling, determine the length, and your sum value is given your sum value is given for the. So suppose this is your given sigma 1, sigma 2, epsilon 2, epsilon 1. Now you know, and the condition is both are hinged. Both ends are hinged. Okay. Now you can, if you just see the formula, your formula is P critical is equal to pi square EI upon LE square, and that is equal to L square for the both hinged condition. So if you want to obtain the length, you need to find the, you need to know the values, every values, because only one equation you need to know the all the values. So you need to know the what is the P critical value, E value, I value. So you can obtain I as 1 by 12, 10 to the power 4. Your one thing is known, but your E value and your P critical value is not known. So first of all, your E value can be obtained from this condition only. So this is your stress strain curve. So E value is tan theta. So tan theta is equal to E, and that is equal to, if you apply the line concept, y1 minus y2 upon x1 minus x2. This is your it's equation of a straight line. So sigma 1 minus sigma 2 upon epsilon 1 minus epsilon 2. So from this equation, you obtain the E value. Now, as you know, you are getting your E value, but you don't know the P critical. What you should do? You can take the ultimate strength, okay, or the yield strength, depend on the condition for which failure they are considered. If failure is happening for brittle material, you can consider the yield strength. Generally, ultimate strength is considered because uh, you can say that for the ultimate strength, the compressive failure will happen. Okay, so so P critical is sigma ultimate or sigma yield, depend on the condition, into area. Area 10 square. So you can obtain P critical from that one. So you put the area, you get P critical. So now P critical value is known, E value is known, uh, I value is known, pi value is known. You can obtain length. So this is they put the question in this way, and it is a 2 marks question and numerical filling question that asked in 2019 or 20. I hope now this is okay to you. So whoever asked, please reply. Okay. So this is a good question because generally we are assuming that, oh, Euler buckling, easy question, P value can be given, E value, and we can obtain length. But not, they are not going to ask you like in the simple way, or you can expect a rectangular problem, means rectangular cross section problem. Suppose this is your buckling, okay, and this is your column, and your cross section is a rectangular. So you need to find the I minimum. Which value is I minimum? I minimum is equal to 1/12, whatever be the configuration. So it will not buckle. It will only buckle through this plane only. That will tend to make the movement here. Okay, I am unable to draw in 3D, but let me try if I can draw. So so this is your beam or rectangular. Now what will happen? There are two planes. First plane is this plane up to which it can buckle, or this plane up to which it can buckle. So the normal condition is which plane has I minimum. So you can see that uh, we can see that this plane has I minimum because its length is b, and you are taking a smaller length into whole cube. That means this length has I this about this plane it has I minimum. So suppose this is Ix. Okay, now it will tend to buckle like this. So this plane will go here. So the buckling would be like this. So okay, I'm just trying to do how the buckling will happen. I'm able to do that. So this is the portion. So this portion will tend to move here for the load. So that's why you need to find the I minimum. So in exam you can expect a question where I minimum and I maximum are different. So you need to find I minimum, and they can even ask what is the minimum slenderness ratio. So you need to equate the sigma critical, sigma compressive into area is equal to pi square EI upon LE square. So for that, you can get your slenderness ratio, you can get the length. So these are the only question that is going to ask in Euler buckling. So I hope Euler buckling is clear. So I'm going with the strain Rosset. So uh, giving you 5 minutes break because we have again 1 hour left. I need to make a please come at 12. Okay, it is 11:53. Please come at 12. Okay, I'm start at 12. Okay, I'm giving you 5 minutes break. Am I audible to you? Please confirm. Okay. So strain Rosset means suppose just this is a theory, but you need to know. So suppose you want to know the means what are the quantities that can be measured. So you can measure the elongation. Okay, first of all, you cannot measure the stress. Why I am saying that? Because stress is an internal property, and internal properties cannot be measured. It can be linked with external properties to know what is the meaning of that. So suppose this is your bar. Okay, this is your suppose this is your bar, and you are applying load. Now what is the internal stress at this point? How you know? You don't have anything to measure the internal stress. So what we do is we measure, what we generally measure is we measure the strain. Okay, we measure the strain, then we multiply it with the Young's modulus to know the stress at that location, at that point, at that body. So so the strain Rosset is doing the same thing. Strain Rosset is doing the same thing. It is measuring the strain in the body, and that strain will be coupled with the Young modulus to know the stress in the body. Okay, so the body doesn't know the stress in the body. We only know the strain. Strain can be seen even if you just take a rubber, the eraser, whatever you say, and you apply a force like this, it will elongate. You can see the elongation, but you don't know what is the internal stress. So if you just multiply the Young's modulus with the elongation, you can get the stress in the body. That means your measured quantity, or you are measuring this quantity strain, and this is your what we say. This is your known, means you are getting this quantity, getting from the equation. So what is the strain gauge? Means first of all know what is strain gauge. So strain gauge is something like this. So it will be wired that is coupled around is around a DC source. Let me try to DC source. Now what will happen is suppose uh, so someone is unmuted, please. So suppose you just this is your body. Okay, now I am patching a strain gauge here. Okay, let me go like this. I am patching a strain gauge here, and I am applying force. Now because of the P force, the body will elongate. So it is glued at the surface. Now what will happen? This strain gauge will also elongate. And now you know resistance. If suppose this is something is connected and your ammeter is connected in between. So this is your ammeter, basic electrical engineering. So if you know resistance is equal to rho L by A, and your volume of the material is A into L, that is constant. Now if you are applying a load, the length will increase, and that will leads to increase in resistance. But you know volume is constant, that means the area will decrease, and area will decrease also for these cross section of wires. So that will tend to increase the resistance. The resistance will increase. And now if you applied a constant, suppose this is your voltage V is applied, so you know V is equal to IR, or I can write I is equal to V by R. So as your resistance is increased because of elongation, your current is decreased. Okay, so that means elongation can be calibrated. That is a function of R. Sorry, the current, the, the current is a function of R, or even inversely proportional to R. That means if your resistance will increase, your current will decrease. And that is calibrated with the change in length with the original length. Okay, this is the calibration that has been done. So what is the meaning of that? So you directly measure the current. So this is ammeter is connecting. So if you apply the P load and a ammeter is connected, now that will measure what is the change in the current, and that will help you to obtain what is the change in length. So this is your coupling. resistance change, resistance will change the current, current will directly calibrated to length. So if particular change in length is there, particular resistance change in there, so that will help you to find the length, what is the increase in length. So this is your strain gauge. So it is patched on the body, and that will, a P force is applied, it will also elongate along the body, that will change the resistance, correspondingly the current will change, and correspondingly we can obtain the change in length. So this is your strain gauge. Okay, so this is a basic principle. Now what is combination of strain gauge, combination of strain gauge is called strain rosette. Okay, strain rosette. What is the meaning of that? So suppose what I want to say is, you know, there are few configurations: star, delta, rectangular. Three things are available, but you know you can obtain it for any combination. So suppose if at any point of the body, so this is your point of the body. Okay, or let me draw the body. First of all, you need to know the formula. What is the so your strain gauge only measure normal stress. Strain gauge only measure normal stress, normal strain. Sorry, that means you cannot measure your shear strain. Now, how you can you will get the shear strain? You will get it from the normal strain using solving the equations. Now, which equations you need to solve, that I am going to show you. So you need to remember that the strain gauge only measures normal strain. That is the important thing. So I'm going to tell you one formula. So just that is epsilon at any point theta. What is the value? Okay, so it is epsilon x plus epsilon y by 2 means minus, just wait a second. What is the formula? Just epsilon what is epsilon at any point theta is epsilon x plus epsilon y by 2 plus epsilon x minus epsilon y by 2 cos 2 theta plus gamma xy by 2 sine 2 theta. This is your e at any theta, and gamma xy, gamma by 2 at any theta is minus x minus y by 2. So this is like this, sine 2 theta plus gamma xy by 2 cos 2 theta. You need to learn this formula because you are not going to derive the equations. For strain rosette, this is the only formula, and these formulas are obtained from the Mohr circle. So I'm not going with the derivation how we obtained this. We are going with the application part. So suppose you had you had given so I'm talking about, suppose one delta formation, what we say, or star, we can say it is delta or star, both are almost same thing, delta formation we can say. So this is your a body, you have a 3 strain rosette, okay, in 3 directions. Now this is your first direction, this is your second direction, and this is your third direction. Now you are given this is your e at x axis, and your this is your 120-degree angle, and this is your again 120-degree angle. Now you have given 3 strain gauges, that is at theta is equal to 0, at theta is equal to 120, and at theta is equal to 240. These 3 strain gauges are present. Now you can say, sir, why 3, why not 4, why not 6, why not 8? So you can see you have 3 variables: epsilon x, epsilon y, and gamma xy. You know theta, you know this value, you have 3 unknowns. So to solve 3 unknowns, you need to have 3 equations. That's why 3 strain gauges are present. That will give us 3 equations, and that will be solved to get epsilon x, epsilon y, and gamma xy. Now, what is the value of epsilon x, epsilon y, and gamma xy? What is the need we need to find? So if we obtain epsilon x, epsilon y, and gamma xy, and we can draw the Mohr circle using that I hope you remember gamma x y by 2 and epsilon, and we draw a Mohr circle like this, something like this. Okay, we can obtain the principal stresses, principal strains, and from principal strains we can obtain the principal stresses. You know principal strains, so we can obtain, suppose this is epsilon 1, this is your epsilon 2. You can obtain principal stresses drawing the Mohr circle, knowing the values, and from the principal strains you can obtain, you know, epsilon 1 is equal to sigma 1 by E minus mu times sigma 2 by E, and epsilon 2 is equal to sigma 2 by E minus mu times sigma 1 by E. So again, two equations, two unknowns, sigma 1 and sigma 2, we can obtain that. That's why we need to obtain sigma x and sigma y to draw the Mohr circle, and that Mohr circle will lead us to draw the principal stresses. So I'm just going with it. So if any problem in between, you can just unmute yourself and ask, sir, please let me know, or let me again do the same thing. I will do that. So suppose this is what I just earlier draw is strain delta formation of a strain draw set. So now everyone understand why three strain draw sets. So anywhere you consider, there are three strain draw sets only, not for delta, rectangular, star, whatever you see. So this is your angle. So this is your 120 degree. This is your 240 degree. Okay. Now epsilon at any point theta is that I written is please epsilon x plus epsilon y by 2 plus epsilon x minus epsilon y by 2. Plus epsilon x minus epsilon y by 2 cos 2 theta plus gamma xy by 2 sin 2 theta. So this is your value. Now suppose at here theta first for first condition. So I am writing E1. E1 is equal to, here theta is 0 because you know it is along the x direction. So whatever angle being made from the x direction is called the angle that is measured in counterclockwise direction and in from the x direction. So E1 is equal to Ex plus Ey by 2 plus Ex minus Ey by 2 cos 2 theta, that is 0 degree, that is 1, plus gamma xy by 2 into 0. That means you are getting E1 as E epsilon x. Okay, this is your first equation. That means directly from the first strain gauge you are getting a value. Now for the second condition, E at 120 degree, that is I am saying as E2. I am saying it as E2. E2 is, so you, if you measure the strain value in one direction, you are directly getting the epsilon x value. Now E2 is given epsilon x plus epsilon y by 2 plus epsilon x plus epsilon, sorry, minus, okay, epsilon x minus epsilon y by 2 cos 240 degree plus gamma xy by 2 sin 240 degree. Okay, now from this value and epsilon 240, that is epsilon 3, that is this is a 240 degree, is epsilon 3, that is equal to by 2 plus epsilon x minus epsilon y by 2 cos 480 plus gamma xy by 2 sin 480. So you know epsilon x, from these two equations you can get epsilon x, epsilon y, and gamma xy. So if your three things are known from these strain wedges, now anyone can say, sir, why particular this configuration? Why we are doing this only? Now suppose I can do rectangular configuration also. What is the meaning of rectangular configurations? So this is your first strain gauge, this is your second strain gauge, this is your third strain gauge here. That means this is your x direction. So and this is your 45 degree angle, and this is your whole 90 degree angle. So this is your 1, this is your 2, and this is your 3. So simply you can also write for E1, E2, E3. So for E1 you will directly get epsilon 1, For E3, you will directly get, sorry, epsilon x. For E3, you will directly get epsilon y, and from E2, you can get some function of gamma xy. So you can obtain gamma xy from E2. So you are getting the three things directly from the equations. Okay. Now, knowing the value, then you can draw the Mohr circle. Okay. So if I know epsilon x, epsilon y, and gamma xy, let us draw the Mohr circle. Okay. And the circle will give at this point your maximum principal strain, your minimum principal strain. So if you know E1, if you know, sorry, I should write it like E1 m maximum, E2 m minimum. E1 m is given sigma 1 by E minus sigma 2 by mu times sigma 2 by E. This is your equations. Okay. Epsilon 2m is sigma 2 by E minus mu times sigma 1 by E. So you can directly get the principal stresses at these corresponding planes. That means wherever the principal strains are there is a principal stress. So you can directly get sigma 1 and sigma 2. So if you solve 1 and 2, that is 1m and 2m, you can directly get as sigma 1 is equal to E times mu epsilon 2 plus epsilon 1 divided by 1 minus mu square, and sigma 2 is E times mu epsilon 1 plus epsilon 2 divided by 1 minus mu square. That means you can directly get the maximum principal stresses and minimum principal stresses. Okay, these are your values. That's why strain draw sets are used, because you can not directly measure the stresses. You measure the strains at three different angles. And why three? Because three equations you need to solve in a plane. In a plane, there are three unknowns, because if we go out of the plane, there are around, you can say, 9 unknowns, because every plane will have three unknown quantities, but in 3D. So in a plane, three unknowns, three strain gauges that will measure normal strains, and then we substitute that value to get the value of what we say as epsilon x, epsilon y, gamma xy. Then we draw the Mohr circle. You can get epsilon 1 max minimum principal strains, maximum principal strains. They are planes. What is the how much angle we should rotate to make the we can make the inclinations to which, or at any angle theta. It can also ask at this angle what is the strains. So from this value you can directly get from the Mohr circle, and then you can obtain principal stresses and principal strains. So I am asking, anyone has any doubt how, why we are doing, how we are doing, and where it is leading to. So these three things you need to know: why strain draw sets is used, what we are going to do with strain draw sets, and what we are getting with strain draw sets. So I hope you are clear with it. Anyone has any question? Hello, please respond. Otherwise, I need to explain again. So I'm asking you, please. If you understand, then please reply yes, I understand. If you haven't, then please say no, sir. Again, I explain. Okay. Someone responded. So there are 15 persons, and I'm getting one response. Wow. Uh, okay. So strain process is. I have one question in somewhere in between the course. I just said that I will discuss this question when I will complete the strain process. I'm seeing where it is. Where that question is, I'm seeing that. Yeah, no, this is again, this is those. So just to give me a minute, I'm seeing where it is, where that question is. So yeah, this question. So I am just snip it. I should just take a copy paste. Okay. So this question is, no, I just this question I solved, not this question. This question I solved. No, not this question. This question I don't know. So I don't know where the question is, but I remembering. Okay, leave it. We will do some other time. So these are strain Roset's questions that I want you to remember, and this will help you in solving the question. Now I am going with the shear center concept. So these three particular topics remained in the syllabus. So what is shear center? So suppose just a basic, first of all, what is shear center is suppose you have a body. Okay, this is your rectangle. Let me draw it. So suppose this is your body, and you know that it has this is your neutral axis. Okay, now this is because of the symmetry. If you apply a load at the center, what it will call, suppose this is your support at the end, and you apply a load and the cross section is this. Now what will happen, this will try to bend the system, only bending is there. Okay, only bending. Now if you just apply at this point, what will happen, I just explained you. Suppose, let me erase this point. So suppose if I am pointing at this point, what will happen? You can substitute the load at center and a couple will left, that will twist the body, because you are saying that this causes twisting as well as bending. So for this case, you will have twisting as well as bending. Now for circle, even you will get the same thing. Now if I apply load at its diameter, now at its parallel to the diameter, now what will happen, if you transfer the load, it will also tend to form a twist, because you can shift shifting. I know, hope you know how to shift the loads. So suppose this is your circle and a load here acting here, so you can just put a equal and opposite load here, and this will tend to form a couple that will twist the body. So this twisting would cause a torque in the body as well as a bending moment. So this will again create a bending and twisting. Now from these two figures, you can get that when the applied load is when the body, or when the load is applied along the symmetry of the body, okay, along the symmetry, then that will only cause, or axis of symmetry, that will only cause bending, not twisting. Okay, so if I apply at a line passing through the center of gravity or the symmetrical point, then we can get only bending, no twisting. But if it doesn't apply here, it will get twisting. So uh, your plane of symmetry, if we apply load, it will not create any twisting. So I am giving you 1 minute. Please try to think what I just said. If I applied load along the plane of symmetry, it will not create a bending, it will not create a twisting moment. It will only create a bending moment, just in a circle and also in rectangle. So just remember, think what I said just. I'm coming 1 minute. Okay, now suppose if I take a C section, okay, what is a C section means? Suppose, let me draw it like this. So suppose you have a rod like this, and your cross section is in C form. So this is your C section, or I would write Now again. Okay, this is your C section. Now what will happen to this C section? You are saying that suppose this is your center of gravity. You can know that center of gravity for the upper body is this, for this body is this, and for this body is this. So it will again lie somewhere here, the center of gravity. So if I applied center of gravity at this, if I apply a load at the center of gravity, it will tend to twist the body as well as bending, because body is not symmetric. So just for the demonstration, so suppose you bend your hand like this, your fingers like this, okay, and you apply a load. So if you bend your fingers like C form and you apply a load at the top, it will tend to bend your fingers. So that's what I'm saying is, so it will not only create some, suppose this load is acting, it will not only create the bending but twisting. That means center of gravity doesn't resist, the center of gravity is not that point where twisting can be, uh, means you can neglect the twisting, or you can just uh, avoid the twisting. You cannot avoid it. So the point of the body, it can be imaginary or in the body. It can be outside the body or in the body. Imaginary means outside the body. Point on the body where someone is unmuted. Who is there? Okay. So point on the body where if load is applied, it will only create bending and no twisting. So that what is the meaning of shear center. So that point is called shear center. Okay. So that mean, what is the meaning of that? So suppose you applied at the center of gravity, but it is not resisting your what we say, it is not resisting the twisting. That's why a center of shear center is at that point where you apply load. Suppose for C section, the center of shear center lies outside and somewhere here. So if you apply P load here, so just so if we apply P load here, it will only create bending. Now some people say, sir, how you apply a load in the air? Because it is not the part of the C section. So yeah, that is not part of the C section. That's why I written it can be outside the body or inside the body. And if a load is applied, it will only create bending and no twisting. But how you apply a load in the air? So that what we do is we weld a plate, a small plate like this, okay, in around this, and we apply load at this that plate. Then although the main properties of the moment of inertia, the center of gravity doesn't change because a small plate is welded, okay, and we apply load at that plate only at this point. And suppose this is your value E. So at only distance E, you apply the load and it will create a anti-twisting moment. So what will do if we apply a load at this point? It will tend to bend but also twist the body like this way. So we apply a load at this point that will counterbalance this twisting. Okay, and that will put the value to 0. That is the value of your shear center, or that is that, and this point is called the shear center. So I just saw in mechanical, it is early, it is just introduced in 2020, and in civil it is earlier introduced, but only theoretical concept is asked. So what is shear center? So they asked what is shear center. Shear center is a point where only bending is possible, only bending is there. So in that a theory portion is asked, only bending, no twisting. And also in civil they asked for the C section, what is the shear center. So they're given like this is P, this is Q, this is R, this is S, and they ask what, where is the shear center possible. So P is the point where shear center is possible. So these are the shear center questions. They haven't asked in last year also in mechanical. In civil they asked only theory portions, and so these are not so important for if you just leave it, it can be, but you know the basic concept what is, because if 1 marks question can be asked, you should know what is the concept of shear center. So this is your question for shear center. So what we left is, so I'm going to discuss some questions related to Euler buckling and thin cylinders that is left in the earlier section. So I'm going with the thin cylinder first, and Euler buckling and strain energy questions I will do after lunch. Okay, so that will be good. If any doubt is there for you in the whole topic, because if you say you have a doubt, I will explain that topic here, and then after lunch I will do the question. So if you have any doubt in the questions in topics, you can ask. I am giving you 2 minutes to just type your chat in chat box, reply whatever you want to ask. So that, otherwise I will proceed to question. Then only question session will be there. I have half an hour. I can explain any topic to you. I'm waiting, please. If you understand, then write clear, sir. Okay, but I'm waiting your reply, because if I move to this question, it will be difficult for me. Yes, someone responded. Let's see. Okay. Uh, we are going towards the questions for the thin cylinder, because we haven't done the question for thin cylinders. And okay, I think most of the things has been covered. So going with the thin cylinder part. So for the first question, it is given a thin-walled spherical cell is subjected to internal pressure if the radius of cell is increased by 1% and the thickness is reduced by 1% with the internal pressure remaining the same. The percentage change in the circumferential stresses. So first of all, they have given, for the for a sphere, the stress circumferential stress is PD by 40. Now it is given if the radius is increased by 1% and your thickness is increased by 1%. So if we convert it in radius, P into R upon 2T. So now your new R1 is 1.01 times R, and your T1 is 1.0 reduced. Okay, it will be 0.99 times T. Okay, how I have done is, this is your R and it is increased to 1%, that is 0.01 R. So that is, and if you decrease thickness by 1%, 0.01 T. So I written it directly. Now that will lead to, mm, just give a sec. So now new circumferential stress is P remain the same. The radius is now 1.01 R divided by your 2 into thickness. What is the value of thickness? Thickness is your 0.990. Now you can write it like P R by 2T into 1.01 divided by 0.99. So 1.01 divided by 0.99, what is the value? Let me just write it. Its value is 1.02. Okay. 1.02 of sigma critical. So this is your old. I'm writing old. So you can say that the percentage change, they asked what is the percentage change. So if I just subtract it from my 1, that is around 2%. The change in the stress is around 2%. Just give me a sec. I'm seeing the answer. What is the answer? So Yeah, so the answer is so now so the percentage change they asked, so you can now put it like in this way: 1.02 minus you just put it like sig 1 divided by 1 into 100, that is around 2% change is occurred. So this is your value 2%. The next question is: a long thin walled cylindrical cell closed at both ends is subjected to an internal pressure. Uh, the ratio of the hoop stress to longitudinal stress developed in the wall. So you know hoop stress, you know that the direct formula is what is the hoop stress to longitudinal stress. That is its ratio is 2. So it is directly the value is 2.
Sir,
Yeah.
sorry for the interruption, sir. So the first sum, the circumferential stress formula, isn't it PD by 2T, sir?
No, it is given spherical cell.
Oh, okay, sir. Thank you.
And that's what I
Sorry.
have written. A cylindrical tank with closed ends is filled with a compressed air at pressure of 500 kilopascal. Inner radius is given, wall thickness is given, magnitude of maximum in-plane shear stress. There are two things. Remember, whenever they asked in planes maximum shear stress, so in plane you have for cylinder you have two stresses. That is one is circumferential, one is longitudinal. So you know maximum shear stress is what? Sigma circumferential minus sigma what we say longitudinal divided by 2. But if they asked out of the plane what is the maximum shear, so in out of the plane situation you have three stresses: sigma circumferential, sigma longitudinal, and a 0. In third plane it is 0. So if they asked out of the plane or in the body, your value will be tau max is sigma critical minus 0 divided by 2, because this is your maximum, this is your minimum stress. So if they asked in plane, so in plane your tau max is sigma circumferential minus sigma longitudinal divided by 2. So that is the value. And your answer, if you just solve it PdV for 40 and for it is 25 megapascal. So we can solve. I'm just going with the concept because lots of questions are there. Next question is: a gas is stored in a cylindrical tank of inner radius and wall thickness is given, and the gauge pressure of the gas is 2 megapascal. The maximum shear stress in the wall is, again, it is asking the maximum shear stress in the wall. So when it is asking in the wall, so look here in set 3, they asked in the plane, and here in the wall they are they change the configuration. Now you know wall is 3D, wall is 3 dimension, and when someone is asked in the plane, they asked in 2D. So in 2D you have one stress here that is circumferential, you have one stress here that is longitudinal. But when they asked in 3D, you have three stress conditions: sigma circumferential, sigma longitudinal, and in third direction we have a 0 stress. Okay, now in that condition, for this question you need to consider the circumferential, longitudinal, and a 0 value. The third stress is 0. So when they asked in the wall, the maximum stress is sigma critical by 2. Okay, because it minus 0 it will be 0, then sigma minus sigma critical by 2. And your value for that is 140 megapascal. And if you done it in this way, if you taken both if you had taken in these two cases, then you will also get answer 70. And that's why they had put the question in that way. And in the same year, in this look in set 2 and in set 3 they asked the question, and in plane they asked, and again they asked in the wall. So you need to know what is the difference. So that's why please respond if you understand what is the difference between in the plane and in the wall. Okay, so that look these things I cannot teach when because in theory there are few very much things, but when we do questions we can know the difference how they are setting the questions. So you can also get 70 megapascal, but that is not the correct answer. The correct answer is 140 megapascal. Now the next question is, a thin cylindrical pressure vessel with closed ends is subjected to internal pressure. The same answer, that is here the value is 2.0. Okay. The next question is, the inside and out. This is a thick word problem. This is not in the syllabus. Okay. This is for the PI part, not us. A thin cylinder of 100 mm diameter and 5 mm thickness is subjected to an internal pressure P and a torque of 200 Newton meter. So you need to find the magnitude of the principal stresses. So if we draw the question, I'm drawing it here like, so you have a thin cylinder and it is subjected to internal pressure 10 megapascal, and here it is given torque, that is 2000 Newton meter. Now you need to find the magnitude of principal stresses. So let us draw the stress diagram. So one stress is circumferential, that is PD by 2T. One is longitudinal, that is PD by 4T. And one is because of this torque, the outer surface will experience a shear stress. So tau is TR by J. Okay, and everything is given. So if you just take the values, you can solve just from the equations PD by 2T, PD by 4T. And so the values will be somewhat, suppose this is coming 100 megapascal, this is coming around 50 because 100 by 2 is 50, and this will suppose coming 25. Now what you will do is you take the maximum and minimum condition, that is sigma maximum principal stresses is sigma x plus sigma y by 2 plus under root of sigma x minus sigma y by 2 whole square plus tau xy whole square. This is your formula. You can just put the value, you can get the maximum principal stress, and for minimum just put here negative sign. Everything else is same. So these are your magnitude. So your value is for maximum is I'm writing here 110, and your minimum is 39 or around 40. So these are your questions. So in here it is given a cylindrical container of radius 1 meter, wall thickness 1 mm is filled with water up to depth of 2 meter and suspended along its upper rim. The density given, acceleration due to gravity is given, the self weight of cylinder is negligible. The formula for hoop stress in a thin wall can be considered at all points along the height of the container. Okay. So what they asked is the axial and circumferential stress experienced by cylinder at the depth of 1 meter. So first of all, because of the gravity, the thing is changing, and what thing is changing, that the longitudinal stress is changing, because it is given hoop stress is same at all points. That means your hoop stress will be same, but your longitudinal stress will change. So first of all, the hoop stress is, or circumferential stress, the value is PD by 2T. So if you solve the value, it is 10 megapascal. Now you have to find the axial or the longitudinal stress. We can call it longitudinal. Now longitudinal is changing. First of all, one longitudinal is PD by 4T, but another, because of the weight, 1 meter, it's above the body, below the body has a weight. So that will try to again pressurize the vessel, and what we say, try to we can say that it will try to because of the weight of the water, this is resisting. Okay, now you don't know the pressure, but pressure can be obtained from rho gh point, rho gh. Okay, so the value is for rho gh is you can just multiply it, and then pressure, you know the diameter, and you divide by 40, then you can get the longitudinal stress. Okay, this is the same question, I think. Yes, same question. So then they asked axial strength, so you multiply, if you obtain the longitudinal stress, so they want axial strength, then you put sigma longitudinal divided by E minus mu times sigma So sigma circumferential divided by E. We can use the formula to obtain the axial strain. In the next question, they asked a thin gas cylinder with an internal radius and a subjected to pressure, maximum permissible stress they given, and they need to ask what is the thickness. So everything is given. You know, sigma is equal to PD by 2T. So this is your maximum stress. So you need to find out what is the minimum value of thickness for that which you design. So you put every values and you can get the value of thickness. Okay. Now in next question, it is given a thin walled cylindrical pressure vessel, diameter is given, pressure is given, normal stress maximum value is given, and again the thickness. So again sigma is equal to PD by 2T. Use the equation, you can get the thickness. So for this value, the thickness is around 10 mm. For this value, the thickness is around 5 mm. Now again, a thin walled cylindrical can with rigid end cap, mean radius given, thickness given. The can is pressurized. Okay, an additional tensile force of 50 kilonewton is imposed along the axial direction. So again, a 50 kilonewton load again is acting along the axial direction. And it is given if the magnitude of axial and circumferential component of stress is equal, the pressure inside the vessel is. So first of all, your sigma circumferential is PD by 2T, and your sigma axial is your first of all PD by 4T plus, because of this stress tau, or let me write it like sigma. Okay, that is given 50 megapascal. So it is given a additional tensile force of 50 kilonewton is acting. So that means you are given an additional load of 50 kilonewton. So you need to find what is the value of the pressure. So the thing is given, axial and circumferential component of stress are equal. That means PD by 2T is equal to PD by 4T plus sigma, and that is, this value is 50. So you can substitute that PD by 4T, you can just take it here and minus it, is equal to 50. You know diameter, you know thickness, the pressure is given. So the pressure that you need to obtain this, its value is around 5 megapascal. The value is around 5 megapascal. So this type of question can be asked where additional force can be applied, and it can be equal to the circumferential stress. Now in next question, they given a spherical vessel. So it is fair problem. Internal diameter given, thickness given, and gauge pressure is given. Yield stress given. Factor of safety you need to find. So first of all, what is the maximum stress that can be in the body? That is PD by 40. So you are given pressure 4000 kilopascal, diameter is given, divided by 40. You can obtain the maximum pressure. Now, what is the factor of safety? I just told you earlier in lectures. Sigma yield upon sigma maximum or sigma allowable. Okay. This was the expression. So sigma yield, you know, given 200, and sigma maximum you can obtain from here. What is the value for sigma maximum? So the value is around sigma maximum. You can get around, if you solve PD by 40 and then you just divide it, it is around 50. And if you just solve it, the value is around 4. Okay. So this is again it is given two concentric circular cylinders of different materials M and N with each other at R is equal to A, R is equal to B as shown. The interface at R is equal to B is frictionless. The composite cylinder is subjected to internal pressure P. Let UR and UM and sigma R, sigma M and sigma denote the radial and the tangential component, stress component, material M, and again in N. This can be considered as a thick value problem, means thick cylinder problem. You can leave it as. Now next question is a thin walled cylindrical pressure vessel with an internal inside diameter, thickness, and a gauge pressure. Maximum shear stress at the point located on the inner surface of the pressure vessel is. So for again, it is the question is for cylindrical pressure vessel. So the question is for cylindrical pressure vessel. So it is PD by 4T, again PD by 2T, PD by 4T and 0, because it is again asking inside the wall. So you know wall is 3D. So it has three component of stresses. So your maximum value is PD by 2T, your minimum value is 0 divided by 2. This is your maximum shear stress. So these are the values. So up to here, uh, hello, up to here, if anyone has any doubt, hello, because now I am going to give you the break for the lunch. Before that, I want to just ask you, if you have any doubt, you can ask. In thin cylinders, in the other concept, if anything is left in your course or thing, because as far as the syllabus is concerned, I have completed the syllabus and I'm going with the question. Now after lunch, I will go with the Euler buckling, strain energy, and then few strain process problem. So can someone write in chat box if you have any problem? Hello, you are not you all are not responding. So what can I consider? How much percentage? So please write in chat box how much percentage of your SOM you think you are expecting to get. Means you understand how much portion of SOM. I'm not talking about the questions how many you had done. Can you give me the percentage? If you just show me how many percentage you learned in SOM. Uh, Please write in the chat box. If any problem, you can. I am not a teacher that I will going to punish you for anything. You can just say what is the percentage you are expecting in SOM you had done. Hello, please respond or write in the chat box. Okay, someone responded. There are 11 persons, excluding me. There are 10 persons. So at least five should respond now. Now 50% we can expect. So after lunch, we will discuss Euler buckling, and I know many of you doesn't. How many of you watch match? Because this is Sunday and at 2 p.m. there will be IPL. I think it is Chennai versus KKR. So I think most of you will enjoy seeing the TV. But okay, I will complete in a quick way so you can go and see. So after lunch, we will discuss Euler buckling in questions, strain energy questions, and what is a strain Rosset question. So for myself, I want to ask you how you are going to grade me. You can just grade me like in between 0 to 5. Okay, this is for myself. Don't look. Don't be how I am very bad in teaching or excellent in teaching. You can grade in between any number. So I'm expecting everyone. Please respond. Just type a number. I am not going to see your name or I am not a teacher. This is for my feedback because this is last class. If you means, can you respond? Can you just please type a number in your chat box?